Hello and welcome to another Lighthouse Wellness Community podcast. I'm Donald McCone.
My name is Frank O'Connor. The Lighthouse Wellness Community, our mission statement. This program is designed to encourage open conversation around wellness, mindfulness, and healing. As part of the Irish diaspora, Donna and I would like to bring an Irish dimension to this conversation. Our hope is to break through the stigma around mental health issues and to bring awareness to the many ways to recovery and to a healthy way of life.
And welcome, Frank, as well. I hope you've had a good week through all of the trials and tribulations.
And good week, actually. Yeah, really good week. Got some more good practice in. I got more results from my exam. I'm almost finished on my mindfulness meditation certification. So one final exam to go, which is really good news this week, Donna. So I'm probably only maybe a couple of weeks away.
Good man. And I learn from the master. Then you'll be my grasshopper.
I can be your grasshopper. I can do that, Donna. So I wanted to mention too today. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Before we start. Lots of folks responding to us over the course of the weeks on the different topics that we've covered. And number one, wanted to say thank you to everybody for reaching out by email and on Facebook and Twitter. It's really nice to get the feedback. One question I got, which I do want to address real quickly, we had one person who wrote to me about Christian meditation, because we don't get involved in any type of denomination thing, but I understand that people have their own belief systems, and we have a very good friend actually who's involved very much with Christian meditation. His name is Donald Main. Donald and I are old friends, and I want to give you some information. If you're interested in meditation from a Christian perspective, the link to his website is www.christianmeditations.us. If you're in Ireland, it's christianmeditation.ie. And then there's a national US organization, wccm-usa.org. Again, you can just Google that and it'll all come up. So again, just wanted to mention anybody interested from a Christian perspective in meditation, that's through our friend Donald Main, and he will definitely guide you in the right direction.
And if we can share any other similar styles, similar sites, please get in contact. That's part of the mission, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, very, very good point. If you have
spread the word.
Yeah, other resources out there, particularly in light of wellness, mental health, meditation, mindfulness, please feel free to send us that information, and we will happily share it with our audience.
In fact, we have certainly talked to a number of people, and I know a number of people have contacted me indirectly who are kind of experts in the field or offer kind of their way of healing. And so we might introduce a kind of a secondary kind of podcast with interviews with those at some stage. They may not be on video, but we might start doing that too.
Yeah, we have some people definitely who we want to talk to, and we have spoken to, who we'd like to bring back and get that information out to you, to our audience.
So this week, a very interesting question, because some of the things we put out there, they're just words, and we kind of ask questions around them, but it's a distinct question today.
Today is an interesting one. The question is, who am I? And it can be posed in many different ways. I mean, it can be a very simple question, and it can get very deep, the same question. So a good place to start, Donna, would be, when I normally would ask the question, who am I? And we can both answer this. I would say, initially, I mean, it might be different today, but most of my life I would say, I'm Frank O'Connor. I was born in Ireland. I now live in Petaluma. I'm a meditation teacher and a professional musician. I would kind of define myself. And, how would you answer that?
Along the same lines, I've come through many questions and quests to figure all that out. Who am I? But the answers are largely the same in that simplistic way. Are we getting an interruption or two here? We should say this at the start of the podcast. Remember to switch your phones off.
Yeah, switch your phone off.
Well,
exactly.
I am someone who was also born in Ireland. I suppose, worked as a broadcaster for many years. I've come to live in America. I live just south of San Francisco, and I'm a human being. I mean,
And that's exactly. I mean, all of that is appropriate because that's our history, our story. So if I go to it from a little different perspective, if I say I am Frank O'Connor, I'm from Ireland, I live in Petaluma, I'm a meditation teacher, I'm a musician. Now, what happens if I take some of that away? I am Frank O'Connor, I live in Petaluma, and leave it at that. Does it change how I feel? Does it change my perception of myself? And what if I take it back even further? I am Frank. And I look at and allow myself to feel the difference between I am Frank or I'm Frank O'Connor, Irishman, living in Petaluma, meditation teacher, musician, and just begin to minimize it. It changes how I feel, how I respond to that. The next question would be, can I go back and picture Frank as a 10-year-old, for example? I am Frank as a 10-year-old. And then the question is, how does that feel in relation to Frank as a 60-something-year-old? Can I see Frank as a 21 or 20-year-old? And if you're younger, go to your whatever age you're at right now. And how does that feel? And how would you respond to that, Donna, as I walk through that process?
I understand it because I understand that who I am is something that I can define. And yet, when I try to define myself by saying who I am, I put words out there that immediately have labels. Labels that mean something to me, but then start to have some meaning or some contextual meaning to others. And it's useful in one sense because it makes the conversation easier for people to, if you like, define you. You're defining yourself to start off with, but even that definition doesn't serve you well sometimes. I think on the basis of definition, it's a fascinating subject. I'm really glad that this is what you decided to talk about today, because that whole idea of who I am and who I define myself is the most empowering part of our journey to recovery. Because beforehand, a lot of the identification and the tags that we put on were there geographically, circumstantially, and they did define us. We can now kind of chip away at some of those definitions and see how they perhaps have not helped us along the way, or defined us in a way that wasn't best suited to us, or was cumbersome. And it's a chance to redefine, to see who I am. Means cutting away all those cross references from nationality, from locality, from male to female, all of those things, and brings us back to a point of view. And I think this is where you're going to, where we are one and the same. Is that where you?
Yeah,
might be going
I
to?
was taking a little slower path so I could systematically walk to it. So let's go there now. That you brought that in, Donna. If I go to I am Frank as a 10-year-old, I am Frank as a 20-year-old, as a 40-year-old, and sense within myself the different feelings of that, can I then go to, can I picture Frank living in different countries? And I can. Can I take it a step further? Can I picture myself somebody with a different color? Black, brown, yellow, whatever it may be. Can I picture myself living in China, for example? And if I can, what is it that permeates through all of those things? What is the I am, in other words? So I'm left with I am. What is the consistent thing that is Frank at 10, 20, 40, 60 years of age? All those different stories that we talk about, I would describe Frank as a 10-year-old, very different from Frank as a 20-year-old, and the sensations and feelings that go with that. I would describe Frank today as a 65-year-old male, which I will be in a couple of weeks, a very different person, because my perspective on life, the way I relate to life, the way I perceive life, predominantly perceive life, is incredibly different. And yet the question remains, what is the consistent thread that is there through all of that?
And it's a question you've been asking yourself, and do ask, and maybe we'll try and get to the nub of what you think that who you are is. I like this idea of trying to think of yourself in a different situation, a different person's perspective. That's complete empathy for me. It's another way of describing empathy, and realizing, yeah, well, the simplest things to realize physiologically is that we are the same. We're made of bones, we're made of skin, we're made of blood that pours through us, and apparently it's the same colour for all of us, despite being told there were those with blue blood for many years, the kind of higher in society. So that commonality brings you to one level. Well, at least as a human being, I'm consistent with this other. Does it mean that I could then start to believe that maybe I have the same heart, feelings of heart, not so much the physical heart, but the emotional heart, the mental kind of connection with all of that? And there's no other way you can say, of course I have. I have to have that commonality. How can I be different? Just because someone was born 4,000 or 5,000 miles this way, a little further south, their colour of skin may be different because of that, but surely at the core of all of it, I'm exactly the same as that individual. I have to be. Unless you believe that there are 5 or 6 different kind of races that think differently emotionally. And I doubt that very much.
Yeah, I mean, a great idea that you just mentioned is the composition of the human body remains consistent regardless of where I happen to be living or where I was born. It's all composed, same atoms, same molecules as out there in the universe. So if I come back to that question again, I kind of keep returning. I am Frank, or Francis actually is my proper name. I am Francis O'Connor, living in Petaluma, and I begin to remove Petaluma, remove Frank. I'm left with I am. And therein lies the rub. When I say I am, what exactly does that mean? And what is the connection then? Where does that lead? For example, Dana, I used to say, and I think I've said it on a podcast before, at times in my life, very unsure of who or what I was. I would be chameleon-like. I would adapt to the situation. I can still do it. There's Frank, the entertainer, the musician. There's Frank, the meditation teacher. If I'm in a room, you and I are talking, I'm one type of personality. If a third and fourth or fifth person come in and sit with us, I might shift again. And that most of us will do that little chameleon-like thing that we do. We alter our behavior according to the environment that we're in. And yet it still does not take away the question, what is consistent through all of that? What is the one thing that is unaltered, that never changes? If I go back to the 5-year-old boy, what is consistent within me today that was there at that point in time? And that is that essence, essence is probably a good word, the I am.
So cutting back all of those, some of the dealing with other people, being in a different circumstance is building rapport in some sense. You're building a different rapport with someone. You're kind of empathizing backwards, forwards, and seeing what your situation is with them. Some is, as you say, part of your performance, if you like. You could call it performance. So it's not quite to the level of your ego, but it's somewhere along there. And that's relatively speaking acceptable. Cutting back from that, it's hard now. It's not an easy one to do. I'm trying to do the process as you talk about it here, and yet I still think that somewhere I do carry the same person through all of those, that I'm honest to myself within the situation that I'm in, that I'm not a false person of me. I'm another aspect of me, but I am at the core of that. There's still Donna, or there's still my essence. Take away the name, that I'm the same with you as I am with someone else and someone else. Sometimes I'll ham it up a bit more. Sometimes I'll be quieter. Sometimes I have a different facet. But I hopefully at the bottom of it, I'm me. Would you find the same, or are you saying we're so layered with all those different people that we don't kind of get to the core?
Oh no, I'm with you, Don. I mean, where I'm trying to go with this is when I remove the layers that you talked about, just take them away. What we did one time in meditation, the invitation into the room. Can you leave at the door your belief system? Can you leave at the door before you come in any attitudes, because that's not what you were born with. They were all given to you. Can you leave your name at the door, because you were not born with the name Francis and somebody gave it to me? Can you leave your nationality? Can you leave memory? Can you leave past, present, and future, and just come in to the room? And then I'm left with, I am. And the beautiful thing, because it's consistent with everything you said, in the recognition of just that simple, beautiful, I am no different than I am sitting here, Donna I am, Frank sitting I am, person sitting in Africa I am. The I am is consistent naturally throughout the natural world. That's where I can go to it. Now again, we're going deep, and there are places along the way. It's almost like climbing a mountaintop. Instead of going down, we're going to go up. But I climb, I reach a plateau, and I need to rest there for a little while. Then another segment comes, I climb further, and I need to rest there. All of those rest points are very valid and very, very important, because I need to be able to regroup before I can move on. So, for example, if I can get to a point where I say, I recognize that some of my behavior in the past no longer serves me well. I will rest here on this plateau for a while and let that settle in and let that regroup, because then that allows me to go even further, take another layer of the onion off.
It makes sense, of course, completely. I've often, and for a long time, not even thought, just realised, or maybe I should say choose to believe, because realisation thinks you've got a hold on the truth. But the truth to me is that the idea of having the name, the idea of having the identification, gives you, in one sense, gives you a certain stability in that you're recognised by others. And indeed, it recognizes the ego within you. It's the attachment to the ego giving you the name. And a certain amount of that is required to survive. That you have to believe that you are a person to others. But by the same token, once you start to do the identification mode, you're caught up in this whole idea of living your identification. Rather than coming back to the point that you are, going further and saying, what am I beyond that? I'm not an Irish person. What does that mean to me? Why do I need to hold on to that? Why can't I just be the person? But society is kind of built that way, as you know, or at least the Western society. And what's been added on to that is the commercialism of attachment. It's an early attachment. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got these attachment, you're used to the attachment, you're building more and more and more. To some degree, it's building a kind of a security. And in other ways, it's building a disaster, because you're attached and more attached to these things and identification that you can't let new things in. You're holding on.
Yeah, the grabbing, the holding, and identifying with myself as a Mercedes-Benz car,
Yeah.
or a job, or the house in wherever, Beverly Hills. I had a spiritual mentor one time who said all the time, I want to tell you something, Frank. You have nothing new to learn. Nothing new to learn. But you have, because everything you need to know is already internally there. But what you do probably have to do is you have to unlearn an incredible amount of things. Back to the layering of the onion. I can unlearn, I need to let that go. That's not serving me well. That belief system, wow, I cannot how many times have we said, all of us, at various times in our lives, I cannot believe I thought that way. I cannot believe I believed that at one time in my life. And again, it could have been very innocent because as a 6, 7, 8-year-old child in a particular environment, in our case, in a Catholic home, in a Catholic country in Ireland, with very distinct belief systems about rigid beliefs that we would look at now, probably both of us, I'm sure, and say, whew, that's difficult for me to believe that as a little kid that was gospel, for want of a better word, that was written in stone. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of unlearning, and eventually coming to a space, and it's process. You know, I'm the first one to say I'm in the process. But getting to a space, present moment, it'll always take me back to that, Donna. It'll always take me back. There was a beautiful saying this week I put up on Facebook that said, depression, it means I'm living in the past. Yeah. Anxiety and fear means I'm living in the future. Peace of mind means I'm living in the present moment. Because in the present moment, that's the place I can release, peel the onion, let it go, let it go, let it go, and just simply be right now.
I had an example. You gave it to me, actually. Someone was kind of making an observation about a certain behaviour that I suppose I don't want to use the word guilty because it wasn't a crime and it's not a hanging offence, but this idea of self-deprecation, where coming from Ireland, we see that in many people. We kind of self-deprecate. We say, do you know, we aren't get above our station here. We've got to say something that'll bring us down, whether it's about myself or about others. And I reflected on the whole idea and the process. And I realised I was to some degree holding on to a belief that, you know, well, we should knock ourselves because we shouldn't really get above our station. And then I thought, well, why do we do that? And I reckoned that it was cultural to start off with. And I reckoned that part of it was something inside of me that I was not prepared to say, well, this is good, this is good, this is good, and we're worthy of this. Instead, I kind of scrape away and pull you back or pull myself down a level, as it were. So that this is the challenging of that idea and that belief. Who am I? Am I somebody that's been defined by hearing it in others and seeing it in others? Or am I a person who should be here and be worthy and not need to do that kind of practice? I know it's not completely on the area that we're talking about, but it's not removed from it.
No, not at all, Dan. I mean, there's that idea too that we have enough awakening today to question things that were assumed. And again, really, some questioning assumptions. There they are, assumptions that were assumed to be correct, and that's a really good one, you know. And we'll just talk about our own culture for a moment. Our culture definitely has that putting itself down, and I understand, you know, 800 years been occupied by a foreign force has an impact on the psyche of a people, for sure. And you can see that all through our culture. And I'm not trying to say that in a bad way about Irish culture, because I love our culture. But I see that deprecating thing. And the beautiful thing is, you see it, I see it. And then now, once I see it, I now have the question to ask myself, does that serve me well today? Is that truly how I feel about myself today? Because now I have the option to say, actually, no, that is not how I feel about myself today. So there's another layer that can be discarded and released.
I have 3 onions out the back.
We got plenty of onions. There's a lot of onions.
It's not just one.
There's quite a number of layers.
It's a layer of layer of layer.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing, Donna. There's a lot of layers.
And it's common through many practices that you and I are involved in, from the meditation. The artist's way gets you to peel back a lot of those layers in as gentle a way as possible, but not to the point where it treats you like a baby. And certainly neuro-linguistic program a lot of it is based on that principle. And it softens the blow, if you like, and it doesn't have to, in that a lot of the beliefs, you were talking about those beliefs and you look back as a 10-year-old, how did I believe that or fall for it or whatever? It was quite natural. What else were you going to do? You did the best that you could with the knowledge that you had at the time. Same as the people who were kind of giving you the attitudes. So yeah, it's there in many practices. So it's one of my favorite things to do. I just need to do it.
Yeah, the beauty of the self-inquiry, self-questioning. One of the big things in meditation that I certainly have learned through doing my, the teaching meditation course, and now that I'm teaching people, I'm seeing it, very clear in perfect focus, is that beautiful process of self-inquiry brings us to a place of redefining is a little, well, let me use that word, redefining exactly who am I, what am I doing in my life today, where have I come from, and where am I going to? All very basic human questions, but all questions that almost everybody on the planet has asked, is asking, or will ask at some stage. And it all leads me to the moment. It all leads me to right now. Because if I go to right now, I can go to my past, for example, and see the story, which is one aspect. And the second aspect is, oh my gosh, it is a story. The entire thing is a story. The entire thing is a story. That's a remarkable awakening, for sure. It's a remarkable opening your eyes and that entire thing is a story. My behaviors and actions and things that I do today, I have brought from out of pieces of that story. Because they're habitual, I'll fall into it again out of habit. But the great thing today is I recognize it and I can ask that question. Oh, there it is, Donna. There it is for Frank's doing. There's that habitual reaction or process for dealing with life again. That is not who I choose to be today. So Mr. Belief, Mr. Reaction, I choose to release you. And that's a beautiful thing.
That's a beautiful gift. I had a visit from one of my family members. My brother was here for the last couple of weeks. And that sharing of stories is an important thing within the families. And yet within that, I was hearing the slightly different version of the same story that I tell or told. And how my story is interpreted from that family perspective, and they're all different perspectives, and it was a wonderful time, and in reflection, I'm able to now say, well, that's why he, she, or it thought that they did, and hopefully that person can see why I thought she or did in my story. But yes, story, and I'll take you a step further. If we have lived the story, perhaps now this is the best time to realize that we can write a different story about the past. And I don't mean ignore or be criminal in our absence of what happened, but have a different perspective. And then perhaps realize that, well, if it's a story, you can write a little bit of fiction towards the future. Do you see what I'm saying here? Because this is where the neuro-linguistic programming side of things comes to the fore with me. That I've had the story, I'm reinterpreting the story, so before I get to the end of the story, I want to write a little bit of that story so that it happens.
Yeah, I remember sitting with a family member, talking about some incidents from our childhood. And the realization, exactly what you said, oh my gosh, the perception of my family member of the same set of circumstances is completely different from my perception over here. We lived through what seemed to be the same set of events, yet it was felt, perceived, therefore the reality was totally different. The reality was totally different. And that's kind of mind-blowing. It also goes back to, and again, another something we put up on Facebook this week. worth taking a moment before judging somebody else and asking the question, what perception could that person possibly be operating from in order to behave in that way? Because I don't know. And that was a beautiful example with me, with my family member, seeing the same circumstance totally different and therefore reacting to that same circumstance totally different. And if that's true in that small circumstance of within our home, it's absolutely true in the broader sense of humanity.
That was a good question you asked at the start of this program, Frank. You got to ask more questions like that. Who am I? We'll keep looking. We're going to, I'm sure, have a meditation around that kind of theme.
We will. So we'll go into our meditation in a few moments here, and we'll keep that theme and bring the self-inquiry process a little more into the meditation. And again, it's something you can use the meditation if you find value from it. Beautiful thing. Met a friend during the week who was going to work and said to me, "Hey, I want to tell you something. There's a little stress to the job this person's doing," and said, "I sat in my car and listened to your meditation before going in to the work situation." Now that to us, is a beautiful thing, because that means that the value to what we're bringing here is real. And again, the point of that is, in today's meditation, the beginning of that self-inquiry process, feel free to take that 10-minute meditation and use it all through the week, for sure.
So take it away with this week's meditation.
Okay, folks. Welcome back to our meditation section. And now we're going to allow ourselves to relax, number one. And in order to facilitate that, just take a deep, mindful breath. Just be mindful of your breath coming in and your breath releasing, going out. Once again, just breathing in deeply and mindfully through your nose, and breathing out mindfully, being aware of the sensations of your breath. As you feel it maybe touch the end of your nose, your nostrils, as it's exiting or entering, you can feel the sensation of the air going down your throat, filling your lungs. Just becoming aware, bringing mindfulness to those sensations. Take a moment to become mindful of our body. Are my feet anchored to the floor? Can I feel my feet anchored to the floor? Am I sitting in a comfortable position, relaxed and comfortable? Is my head sitting lightly on my shoulders but erect and straight? Like a building block sitting on top of a set of Lego. It has resilience, it can move, but it's pretty strong and straight. And as I bring awareness in this way, mindfully, to my physical body, I return again to the breath. The breathing is our core in meditation. It brings us back to awareness and present moment presence. So once again, let's go back to our breath. Breathing in mindfully and deeply to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now hold that breath for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Release that breath to the count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can continue that pattern. It's called the box breathing pattern. If your mind wanders in any way, simply bring it back to the breath and proceed with that again, with that counting process. Now, as we take a moment to follow on from the podcast with the question, who am I? Let's take a moment to picture your response, your answer to that question. In my case, it would be a lengthy question, a lengthy answer, something like, I am Francis O'Connor, born in Ireland, living in Petaluma, California. I'm a mindful meditation teacher, and I'm a professional musician. And your answer may be something similar or of similar length. And now we mindfully want to take a look at that question and answer, and maybe drop off some of the responses. For example, I am Francis O'Connor, living in Petaluma, and just stop there. And see how it feels slightly different internally as you answer it in a shorter way or in a different way. We can go back now to picturing yourself as a 10-year-old child. I am Francis as a 10-year-old child. What does that feel like? What are the sensations attached to that? I am Francis as a 20-year-old. What are the sensations attached to that? And then picture yourself, feel yourself, sense yourself at your current age. And allow yourself to feel the sensations attached to that. Now, the one question we have now is, as I experience these different levels of myself, what is the one consistent thing that is always available, that has always been there? In my case, as Francis as a 10-year-old, and Francis as a 20-year-old, and as Francis as a now 65-year-old male. What is the one consistent thing that has always been there? And a simple way of going a little deeper with that is, instead of responding, I am Francis, I simply respond with, I am. Now, for the next few moments of our meditation, let's just stay with that response, simply the I am, and just be with that. Jia, 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 Maladaya. Now let's take a moment to stay present with this thought. I am. In the I am moment, I have no past. I know no future. I simply am. In the I am moment, I have no guilt. I have no resentment. I have no past. I have no anxiety. I have no fear, because that's all future. In the I am moment, there is simply peace. In the I am moment, there is simply calmness. In the I am moment, there is simply stillness. And the great recognition that this place, that this space is always available to me, always available. I simply choose to sit and be quiet, to relax my body, to focus on my breathing, and to allow the mind to go quiet. And that is our experience of the I am in our meditation today. You can now bring yourself back to the conscious mind, becoming aware of your physical body. Again, taking a deep breath, slowly, methodically breathing in deep through your nose. Breathing out. Feel your feet sitting on the ground. And feel the presence within your physical body, and yet part of your physical body. That is our meditation today. I wish everybody peace and happiness. Namaste. We will see you soon.
So once again, thank you, Frank, for another meditation. Who am I? Question. Wow, it's almost fathomless, isn't it? We could go for days and weeks. We've had a little look at it today. I hope that people at home are getting something from this, where perhaps that's the question that you're asking yourself today.
Yeah, I mean, that process of the self-inquiry that we started today obviously can continue. There are people who spend entire lifetimes contemplating in monasteries and on mountaintops and in ashrams and monasteries all over the world, asking that same question. So this is just our simple but beautiful way of beginning that process and bringing ourselves to a place of peace and contentment.
And that's another Lighthouse Wellness Community podcast. Thank you very much for listening. My name is Donna McCone.
My name is Frank O'Connor. Thank you, everybody.